Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little darker. A time of iron discipline, simmering resentment and uncomfortable choices. We're diving into what life was really like if Germany had won World War I. Forget the romantic notions of alternate history and clean military victories. The truth? You probably wouldn't last a single day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video for more journeys through history's darkest what-ifs. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from tonight. Now dim the lights, settle into your most comfortable position, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1925. The good news? Europe is at peace. The bad news? It's a peace built on the jackboot of German imperial victory. The brass alarm clock beside your bed chimes 6 times. Not the gentle awakening you might hope for, but the sharp military precision that has governed every aspect of life in what was once called Paris for the past 7 years. You're 16 years old, and this is the only world you can properly remember. The war ended when you were 9, and the old France feels more like a story your grandfather whispers than a reality you ever lived. You swing your legs over the side of the narrow iron bed. The floorboards are cold against your bare feet, polished wood that your mother maintains with the same meticulous care she applies to everything in your small apartment. The grain of the wood tells stories of the apartment's history, worn smooth by decades of previous tenants who lived through different times under different flags. Through the thin walls of your family's apartment, you can hear the Müller family next door already beginning their morning routine. Herr Müller is a bureaucrat in the new administration, relocated from Bavaria to help manage the integration of what the Germans now call the Western Territories. His voice carries through the walls as he discusses the day's appointments with his wife in precise clipped German that never varies in tone or pace. Frau Müller still struggles with French, her attempts at conversation with local shopkeepers marked by grammatical errors and pronunciation that makes native speakers wince slightly before politely responding in German. But their children, Klaus and Greta, about your age, speak both languages fluently. Klaus actually speaks French with less of an accent than you sometimes manage with German, and Greta has developed the peculiar ability to think in French when discussing art and literature, switching to German for mathematics and science, as if her brain has organized knowledge according to linguistic logic. You've grown up alongside them, playing in the small courtyard behind your building, sharing homework difficulties, and navigating the social complexities of adolescence in a world where national identity has become subordinate to imperial efficiency. Sometimes you forget that there was ever supposed to be any difference between you, that your parents' generation fought a war whose outcome determined that Klaus's father would give orders that your father would implement. The war ended when you were 9, old enough to remember the nervous excitement of the adults and the strange atmosphere of celebration mixed with uncertainty that marked the German victory parades through Paris. Klaus knocks softly on the wall between your rooms, 3 taps followed by 2, the signal you developed years ago to coordinate your departure for school. You respond with the same pattern, confirming that you're awake and preparing for another day in the integrated educational system that has shaped both of your developing minds, according to principles neither of you had any role in choosing. The morning light filtering through your window illuminates the carefully arranged items on your desk with an almost ceremonial precision. Your school uniform hangs precisely on its hook, every button polished to a mirror shine that reflects the pale winter sunlight, every crease pressed with mathematical exactitude exactly where the regulations specify it should be. The fabric itself tells a story of imperial standardization, dark blue wool with silver trim, cut in the Prussian style that's become standard across all German territories from the Rhine to the Vistula, from the North Sea to the Mediterranean. The wool was woven in factories in Saxony, according to specifications developed by military efficiency experts, dyed with chemical processes perfected in German laboratories, and tailored according to measurements that ensure both comfort and uniformity across millions of young bodies being shaped into citizens of the new continental order. Your textbooks are stacked with geometric precision that would satisfy any inspector's attention to detail. German texts on top as protocol requires, their covers bearing the imperial eagle and the motto Einheit durch Ordnung, unity through order. French texts beneath, their bindings subtly different in design, acknowledging local cultural traditions while making clear their subordinate position in the intellectual hierarchy. Mathematics texts translated from German originals, but printed in bilingual editions that present formulas and theorems simultaneously in both languages, training your mind to think mathematically in the imperial lingua franca while maintaining comprehension in your native tongue. History books that present the Great War as a necessary correction to European imbalance. Geography texts that describe the continent in terms of administrative regions rather than historic nations. Literature anthologies that emphasize common European themes while carefully selecting works that support rather than challenge current political arrangements. Science texts that showcase German innovations in chemistry, physics, and engineering, while acknowledging contributions from other European traditions in ways that suggest collaboration rather than conquest. The new curriculum mandates that all subjects be taught bilingually, though German takes clear precedence in all matters relating to administration, technology, and political organization. French remains the language for discussions of art, local culture, and family traditions, creating a linguistic division that subtly reinforces the intellectual framework of the new order. German for the future, French for the past, with young minds learning to navigate between them according to context and audience. You dress methodically, each movement practiced from years of routine that has become as automatic as breathing. First, the crisp white shirt, its cotton fibers imported from German colonies in Africa, according to trade agreements that ensure imperial self-sufficiency while providing employment for European administrators in distant territories. The collar sits exactly as it should, neither too tight nor too loose, cut according to measurements that German efficiency experts have determined provide optimal comfort while maintaining appropriate formal appearance. Then the wool trousers with their perfect crease, pressed by your mother every Sunday evening, according to specifications provided by the school administration. The crease must be exactly 3 millimeters wide, positioned precisely down the center of each leg, maintained throughout the week as evidence of family commitment to proper standards. The trousers themselves are cut to allow full range of movement during physical education, while creating the sharp silhouette that German aesthetic principles consider most appropriate for developing young minds. The silver buttons on your jacket catch the morning light as you fasten them one by one, each button bearing the embossed image of an oak leaf intertwined with olive branches, symbols of German strength combined with European peace. The buttons are manufactured in Nuremberg, according to designs approved by the Imperial Ministry of Education, polished weekly by students as part of their character development exercises. Each button must be fastened in sequence from bottom to top, a small ritual that reinforces habits of systematic attention to detail. The jacket fits perfectly, tailored according to measurements taken at the beginning of each academic year by traveling seamstresses who visit every school in the German territories. The fit is designed to last exactly 12 months, accounting for normal adolescent growth according to statistical analysis of European developmental patterns. The silver trim follows the line of your shoulders and traces geometric patterns down the front that echo architectural motifs used in official buildings throughout the empire. Your belt, made from leather processed in German tanneries, bears a small buckle engraved with your student identification number and the name of your school district. The leather is treated with chemicals that ensure it will maintain its appearance and functionality for exactly 4 years, the duration of your secondary education, after which it will be recycled into products that serve other administrative purposes. The uniform serves its purpose beyond mere clothing. It's a daily reminder of order, of your place in the grand hierarchy that now governs this corner of Europe. Every morning, as you transform from a private individual into a public representative of the new European educational system, you participate in a ritual that connects you to millions of other young people across the continent who are putting on identical uniforms and preparing for identical days of systematic instruction. But the uniform also serves more subtle purposes that become apparent only after years of wearing it. The quality of the materials and the precision of the tailoring communicate respect for the young people who wear them, suggesting that the system values its students enough to provide them with genuinely well-made clothing. The bilingual labeling and the incorporation of local design elements indicate sensitivity to regional traditions, even within imperial standardization. The comfort and functionality of the design, demonstrate that efficiency can serve human needs rather than simply administrative convenience. Your reflection in the small mirror above your washstand shows a face that could belong to any teenager in any time. But your eyes carry something older, something that speaks to experiences that previous generations of 16-year-olds never had to navigate. There's a wariness there, a careful measuring of words before they're spoken, of thoughts before they're shared, of expressions before they cross your face in public spaces. It's not paranoia exactly, more like learned caution, the internalized understanding that attention to social dynamics can be the difference between advancement and stagnation in a system that rewards conformity while claiming to value individual achievement. The face looking back at you is healthy, well-nourished, clear-skinned from a diet that German administrative efficiency has made more reliable and nutritious than what previous generations typically enjoyed. Your teeth are straight, corrected by orthodontic treatment provided through the school health program that ensures every student meets physical standards considered appropriate for future citizens of the continental order. Your hair is cut in the regulation style, trimmed every 3 weeks by barbers who visit the school specifically to maintain uniformity while accommodating individual facial features. But beneath the surface markers of physical health and social conformity, your reflection reveals traces of internal complexity that can't be standardized or regulated. The slight tension around your eyes when you think about certain topics, the way your mouth sets when you're choosing between saying what you think and saying what's expected, the barely perceptible shift in posture when you transition between languages, as if different tongues activate different aspects of your personality. 7 years of German rule have taught everyone to think twice, to maintain a careful distance between public expression and private reflection. It's not paranoia, because the system isn't generally threatening to those who adapt successfully. Rather, it's learned wisdom about the difference between thriving and merely surviving in a world where political arrangements determine personal opportunities in ways that previous generations couldn't have imagined. Your reflection also shows evidence of genuine confidence and intellectual development that the German educational system has fostered effectively. Your posture reflects self-assurance earned through academic achievement and social competence. Your expression carries the clarity of someone who has been taught to think systematically and analyze problems methodically. The integration of German educational methods with French cultural background has produced exactly the kind of bicultural intellectual capability that the system is designed to develop. But the most striking thing about your reflection is how normal it appears, despite the extraordinary historical circumstances that shaped it. You look like any other intelligent, well-educated teenager preparing for school, not like someone living under foreign occupation or adapting to conquest. The German system has been so successful at creating stability and prosperity that its political origins have faded into background conditions that feel natural rather than imposed. The smell of ersatz coffee drifts up from the kitchen below, carried on air currents that also bring the scent of fresh bread from the bakery 3 blocks away and the faint chemical tang of coal smoke from heating systems throughout the neighborhood. Real coffee is still a luxury, reserved for special occasions or for those with connections to the colonial trade routes that Germany has worked so hard to establish and protect in Africa and South America. The ersatz version, made from chicory and grain, represents one of the small compromises that families like yours have learned to accept as part of the new reality. Your mother has become expert at making the chicory and grain substitute taste almost palatable, a skill learned from necessity rather than choice, but perfected with the kind of attention to detail that characterizes her approach to all aspects of domestic management under the current system. She adds a pinch of cinnamon imported from German territories in the East Indies, a tiny amount of honey from local beekeepers who have adapted their methods to German agricultural standards, and precisely the right amount of heated milk to create a morning beverage that provides both nutrition and psychological comfort. The process of making acceptable ersatz coffee has become something of an art form among French housewives, shared through informal networks of neighbors and friends who exchange recipes and techniques for adapting to ingredient limitations while maintaining some semblance of familiar taste and routine. It's a small example of how local populations have preserved elements of cultural continuity within the constraints of imperial economic policy. You descend the narrow stairs, each step creaking in a familiar rhythm that has marked your morning routine for years. The third step from the top creaks more loudly than the others, a sound that your father keeps promising to repair, but that has become part of the apartment's personality. The seventh step requires careful weight distribution to avoid the particularly loud groan that would disturb neighbors in the early morning hours. The bottom step is solid and silent, providing reliable footing as you transition from the private space of your family's quarters to the shared social space of the kitchen. The staircase itself reflects the building's history, constructed in the 1890s according to architectural standards that prioritize durability over comfort or aesthetic appeal. The banister is made from oak that has darkened with age and use, worn smooth by decades of hands sliding along its surface. The walls are covered with paper that your mother changes every few years, currently featuring a subtle pattern of geometric designs that echo motifs popular in German decorative arts, while remaining distinctly French in their execution. The kitchen warm, heated by the coal stove that your father rises early to tend with the kind of ritualistic attention that transforms a practical necessity into a meditative practice. The stove itself is a marvel of German engineering, designed to burn coal with maximum efficiency, while providing steady, controlled heat for both cooking and warming. The coal is plentiful now, one of the benefits of German efficiency in resource distribution that has made winter heating more reliable and affordable than it ever was under previous French administration. But the abundance of coal also represents the systematic exploitation of German-controlled mining regions, where workers extracted resources under industrial conditions that prioritized productivity over worker safety or environmental protection. The warmth in your kitchen is connected to a vast network of extraction, transportation, and distribution that spans the continent and extends into colonial territories where German mining companies operate according to standards that would be unacceptable within European boundaries. The trains run on time because they carry coal from Silesian mines to Parisian apartments with mechanical precision that ensures no household lacks heating fuel during winter months. The power rarely fails because German electrical generation depends on coal-fired plants that operate according to maintenance schedules developed by engineers who understand exactly how to balance efficiency with reliability. Supplies arrive when promised because the entire continental transportation system has been redesigned to move resources from extraction points to consumption centers according to mathematical models that account for seasonal variations and regional needs. It's a kind of prosperity, even if it comes wrapped in regulation and oversight. Your mother stands at the stove, her dark hair pinned back in the practical style that's become fashionable among women of her generation, a hairstyle that manages to be both efficient and elegant according to German aesthetic principles, while maintaining distinctly French sensibilities about feminine grace and sophistication. The pins holding her hair are made from silver-plated metal, manufactured in German factories, but designed with decorative elements that reflect local artistic traditions. Her dress is cut in the current style, practical for household work, but tailored with enough attention to line and proportion to maintain the sense of personal dignity that French women refuse to surrender regardless of political circumstances. She's adapted to this new world with a grace that sometimes amazes you, demonstrating the kind of intellectual flexibility that allows intelligent people to thrive under changing circumstances without sacrificing their essential sense of self. The woman who once hosted French literary salons in your parlor, where poets and writers gathered to discuss symbolist verse and debate the future of European literature, now discusses German poetry with equal facility, finding genuine appreciation for Rilke and Goethe, while maintaining her love for Verlaine and Mallarmé. Her transformation represents one of the most remarkable aspects of the German success in France, the ability to win genuine, rather than merely grudging cooperation from educated populations who initially opposed the conquest but gradually recognized the benefits of the new order. Your mother's adaptation wasn't simply strategic accommodation to irresistible force, but genuine intellectual engagement with German cultural achievements that she had previously known only by reputation. The literary salons she now organizes feature discussions of European, rather than specifically French literature, with participants including both local French intellectuals and German administrators who share interests in poetry and philosophy. These gatherings have become informal venues for the kind of cultural diplomacy that makes imperial rule feel more like cultural collaboration than political domination. French participants contribute insights about Latin literary traditions and Mediterranean cultural patterns, while German participants offer perspectives on Nordic mythology and Central European folk tradition. But your mother's adaptation also required sacrifice of certain kinds of intellectual independence that she once took for granted. The literary discussions now avoid topics that might be interpreted as political criticism of current arrangements. Poetry that celebrates French national identity is discussed as historically interesting rather than emotionally compelling. Writers who opposed German cultural influence are presented as products of outdated nationalistic thinking rather than defenders of valuable aesthetic principles. Adaptation, she explained to you once during a quiet conversation that felt more like confession than instruction, is not betrayal, it's survival. But she also acknowledged that survival sometimes requires accepting limitations on thought and expression that previous generations would have found intolerable. The question, she suggested, is whether adaptation preserves enough of what matters most to justify the compromises it requires. Bonjour, mon chéri, she says softly, then immediately corrects herself with a slight smile that reflects both humor and resignation. Guten Morgen. The automatic switch between languages has become second nature for your family, a daily reminder of the linguistic complexity that characterizes life in the new Europe. French at home, German in public, and a careful blend of both in the spaces between where the rules aren't entirely clear. And judgment must be exercised about which language serves which purpose most effectively. The correction isn't required by any official regulation, but it reflects your mother's understanding that maintaining German language skills requires constant practice, and that demonstrating such commitment to linguistic integration serves the family's long-term interests in a system that monitors cultural adaptation more through observation of behavior than through formal testing or evaluation. Your father sits at the kitchen table, his fingers wrapped around a steaming mug that bears the insignia of the Imperial Urban Planning Authority, a practical ceramic piece that was distributed to all employees as part of a workplace efficiency initiative designed to standardize administrative environments while building institutional loyalty through shared material culture. His hands show evidence of his work, ink stains from technical drawings, calluses from handling surveying equipment, and the slight tremor that comes from spending hours each day bent over detailed architectural plans that require precision measurement and careful calculation. He works for the City Planning Office, helping to redesign Paris according to German architectural principles that emphasize functionality, efficiency, and the kind of monumental scale that reflects imperial ambitions while serving practical urban needs. Wider boulevards for military parades that also improve traffic circulation and provide better access for emergency services. More efficient traffic patterns that reduce commercial transportation costs while creating strategic corridors that can be controlled during periods of civil unrest. Buildings that reflect the grandeur of the new imperial order while providing more adequate housing, better working conditions, and improved public services than the chaotic urban development of previous eras. His current project involves redesigning the neighborhood around the Arc de Triomphe to create a ceremonial space worthy of German victory celebrations while preserving enough of the original French architectural character to avoid unnecessarily antagonizing local populations who maintain emotional connections to pre-war monuments. It's delicate work that requires both technical expertise and cultural sensitivity, exactly the kind of challenge that the German administration has learned to assign to local professionals who understand both imperial requirements and regional sensibilities. The redesign involves creating new sight lines that emphasize German monuments while incorporating existing French structures into a larger architectural narrative about European unity under German leadership. Streets will be widened and straightened to accommodate larger crowds and provide better police control, but the changes will be implemented gradually over several years to minimize disruption to established patterns of commercial and residential life. Your father takes genuine pride in this work, despite its political implications. The new urban planning standards represent significant improvements in public health, transportation efficiency, and aesthetic coherence compared to the haphazard development that characterized previous French urban policy. The German approach to city planning incorporates lessons learned from successful projects in Berlin, Munich, and other German cities, adapted to local conditions through consultation with French architects and engineers who understand regional climate, geography, and cultural preferences. But the work also requires your father to participate in the systematic transformation of his native city, according to priorities and aesthetic principles that he didn't help to establish and can't directly influence. Every plan he draws helps to make German occupation feel more like permanent administrative reality and less like temporary military imposition. His technical expertise serves German political objectives while providing better living conditions for French populations who had no voice in deciding whether such improvements justified the political arrangements that made them possible. It's steady work, respected work, and he takes pride in it even as something in his eyes suggests he remembers when the city served different purposes and reflected different values. Before the war, Parisian urban planning emphasized artistic achievement and cultural expression alongside practical functionality. Projects were designed to enhance the city's reputation as a center of European civilization rather than to demonstrate the efficiency of German administrative methods. Your father's adaptation to the new system required learning to think about urban space in fundamentally different terms. Rather than designing for cultural expression and artistic achievement, he now plans for administrative efficiency and political control. Rather than creating spaces that encourage spontaneous social interaction and cultural creativity, he designs environments that facilitate systematic organization and institutional oversight. The breakfast is simple but satisfying, representing the kind of meal that German nutritional science has determined provides optimal nourishment for growing adolescents while remaining economically sustainable for middle-class families throughout the empire. Dark bread with butter, the bread baked according to recipes that incorporate whole grains in proportions designed to maximize protein content and digestive health. The butter comes from dairy cooperatives that have been reorganized according to German agricultural efficiency standards, producing higher quality products at lower costs through systematic breeding programs and modern processing techniques. A soft boiled egg, prepared exactly 3.5 minutes to achieve the texture that German dietary experts have determined, provides the best combination of protein availability and digestive ease. The egg comes from chickens raised on standardized feed that ensures consistent nutritional content while minimizing production costs. The hens themselves are housed in facilities designed according to specifications that balance animal welfare concerns with productivity requirements, creating conditions that are more humane than previous French agricultural practices while generating higher yields per bird. A small portion of jam made from fruit, grown in the communal gardens that have been established throughout the city as part of the German program for urban agricultural development. The gardens serve multiple purposes, providing fresh produce for local consumption, creating productive green space within urban environments, teaching agricultural skills to city dwellers who might need to relocate to rural areas, and fostering community cooperation through shared labor on projects that benefit everyone involved. The jam itself is made according to recipes that preserve maximum nutritional value while achieving flavors that satisfy local taste preferences. French jam-making traditions have been combined with German food science to create products that are both familiar and improved, demonstrating how cultural synthesis can produce results superior to either tradition alone. The fruit comes from trees and bushes that have been selected for their ability to thrive in the Parisian climate, while producing yields large enough to support community canning projects. Everything is rationed, not from scarcity, but from principle. Waste is inefficiency, and inefficiency is unpatriotic in the new order that measures success by the systematic optimization of resource use across entire continental systems. But the rationing is generous enough to ensure that no one experiences genuine hunger or nutritional deficiency, and the quality of available food is consistently higher than what most families could afford under previous economic arrangements. The rationing system also serves educational purposes, teaching young people to think systematically about resource consumption and to understand their personal choices as part of larger economic and ecological patterns that affect millions of people across Europe and the colonial territory. Every meal becomes a lesson in continental citizenship and imperial responsibility, connecting individual behavior to collective welfare in ways that build loyalty through demonstrated competence rather than emotional manipulation or ideological indoctrination. But the rationing also represents the systematic control of daily life, according to priorities established by distant authorities who have never experienced the particular conditions and preferences that characterize local communities. French families must adapt their traditional eating patterns to conform with German nutritional theories and administrative convenience, regardless of whether such changes serve local health needs or cultural values. As you eat, your father reviews the morning's news from the official Gazette, a newspaper that represents the pinnacle of German achievement in information management and public communication. The publication combines genuine journalistic investigation with systematic presentation of government policy, creating an information environment that keeps citizens informed about important developments while ensuring that all news is interpreted within frameworks that support rather than challenge current political arrangements. The German economy continues to thrive, with new factories opening throughout the industrial heartland and employment rates remaining at levels that previous European governments never achieved. Unemployment has been virtually eliminated through systematic coordination of education, training, and job placement that matches individual capabilities with economic needs while providing genuine opportunities for advancement based on merit rather than family connections or political favoritism. New factories are opening in the Ruhr Valley, massive industrial complexes that incorporate the latest technological innovations in steel production, chemical manufacturing, and precision engineering. These facilities provide employment for hundreds of thousands of workers, while producing goods that serve both civilian and military needs throughout the German sphere of influence. The factories are designed according to principles that prioritize worker safety and environmental protection alongside productivity and profitability, creating industrial environments that are more humane than previous European manufacturing while generating higher output per worker. The Kaiser has announced plans for a grand exposition celebrating the 10th anniversary of the victory, an event that will showcase German achievements in science, technology, arts, and administration, while demonstrating the benefits that German leadership has provided to all European peoples. The exposition will feature pavilions representing every region of the empire, displaying local cultural achievements within the broader framework of continental unity and imperial progress. In the colonial territories, German engineers are building railways that will connect the entirety of Central Africa, creating transportation networks that will enable systematic resource extraction while providing infrastructure that benefits local populations through improved access to markets, medical care, and educational opportunities. The railway projects employ both European engineers and African workers, with training programs designed to develop local technical expertise while ensuring that construction meets German standards for durability and efficiency. The African railway network represents one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects in human history, spanning thousands of miles of diverse terrain and connecting regions that have never before been linked by modern transportation systems. German engineers have adapted construction techniques to accommodate tropical climates, seasonal flooding, and geological challenges that require innovative solutions combining European technology with African geographical knowledge. But the colonial projects also represent the systematic exploitation of African resources and labor for European benefit, regardless of whether such development serves African interests or respects African cultural values and political autonomy. The railways will primarily carry raw materials from African extraction sites to European processing centers, creating economic relationships that benefit German industry while providing limited advantages to African populations who bear the costs of construction and environmental disruption. Progress marches forward with mechanical precision, driven by 5-year plans that coordinate economic development across the entire continental system and colonial empire. Every factory opening, every infrastructure project, every educational initiative is planned years in advance according to mathematical models that account for resource availability, demographic trends, and technological capability. The German approach to governance treats entire continents as engineering problems that can be solved through systematic application of scientific principles and administrative expertise. But there are other stories too. If you know how to read between the lines of official journalism that must balance truthful reporting with political necessity. Reports of unrest in the Eastern Territories where Slavic populations resist integration into German administrative systems, despite economic incentives and educational opportunities that previous rulers never provided. The unrest typically involves protests against language requirements, religious restrictions, or population relocations that serve administrative efficiency while disrupting traditional community patterns. News of voluntary relocations of populations to regions better suited to their skills and temperament. A euphemistic description of systematic demographic engineering designed to reduce ethnic tensions while ensuring that potentially problematic populations are distributed across territories where they can be more easily monitored and controlled. The relocations are presented as opportunities for advancement and improved living conditions, which they often genuinely provide, but the voluntary nature is complicated by economic incentives and administrative pressures that make refusal practically impossible. Announcements of new citizenship requirements that seem to favor those with German ancestry, or those who can demonstrate complete cultural assimilation through language proficiency, knowledge of German history and culture, and participation in imperial civic activity. The requirements are presented as reasonable standards for participation in continental citizenship, but they effectively create hierarchies of belonging that determine access to educational opportunities, employment prospects, and political rights based on ethnic background and cultural adaptation, rather than individual merit or contribution to community welfare. You finish your breakfast and gather your school materials. Your leather satchel, a gift from your grandmother before she passed, contains everything you need for another day of education in the new European model. Mathematics and science texts translated from German originals, history books that present the Great War as a necessary correction to European imbalance, literature that emphasizes duty, order, and the nobility of service to the state. The walk to school takes you through streets that tell the story of 7 years of transformation. The old Parisian signs have been replaced with bilingual versions. German script, given prominence above the flowing French cursive. New buildings rise in the severe architectural style favored by the imperial administration, all clean lines and imposing facades, designed to inspire both respect and submission. You pass the monument that once celebrated French victories, now rededicated to European unity under German leadership. Fresh flowers are placed there daily by city workers, a small detail that maintains beauty while ensuring the message remains clear. The past is not erased, merely recontextualized within the framework of progress and stability. The streets are clean, cleaner than they ever were in the old days according to your parents. Street sweepers begin their work before dawn, following routes mapped out with German efficiency. There's no litter, no obvious decay, no sense of urban chaos. Everything has its place, and everything is in its place. You encounter other students as you walk, a mix of local French youth and the children of German administrators and settlers who represent the new European reality in. The integration has been more successful than anyone might have predicted, at least on the surface, with friendships forming across ethnic and linguistic lines that would have been impossible during the nationalist tensions that characterized pre-war European politics. Romances have blossomed between French and German teenagers, creating relationships that challenge historical prejudices while raising complex questions about identity and loyalty that their parents' generation never had to navigate. A new generation is growing up that sees this mixed world as normal rather than imposed. Speaking multiple languages as naturally as previous generations spoke only their native tongues, and thinking about European identity in continental rather than national terms. These young people represent either the future of successful European integration or the erasure of distinct cultural traditions, depending on perspective and political philosophy that their teenage minds have not yet fully developed. The students you pass wear variations of the same basic uniform, with small modifications that indicate different schools, grade levels, and specialized programs within the integrated educational system. Some students wear additional insignia that mark participation in youth organizations designed to build imperial loyalty while providing opportunities for leadership development and community service. Others carry books and materials that suggest enrollment in advanced technical programs that prepare students for specialized roles in engineering, administration, or colonial. The conversations you overhear reflect the linguistic complexity of daily life in the new Europe, with students switching effortlessly between German, French, and occasionally other languages as context and audience require. Some students speak German with slight French accents, others speak French with German pronunciation patterns, and a few have achieved the kind of perfect bilingual fluency that German educational policy aims to develop across all integrated texts. But you also notice subtle social hierarchies that reflect the political realities underlying apparent integration. German students tend to speak more confidently in public spaces. French students often defer to German preferences when making group decisions about activities or social arrangements, and students from other territories carefully gauge the ethnic composition of any group before contributing to discussions that might be interpreted as politically sensitive. Hans Weber falls into step beside you as you turn onto the main thoroughfare leading to school, his presence providing both companionship and a practical demonstration of how personal friendships can bridge political divisions while never completely transcending. He's the son of a German engineer who moved to Paris in 1920 to work on the city's infrastructure improvements as part of the systematic program to modernize conquered territories while providing employment opportunities for German technical professionals. Hans speaks French with a slight accent that has actually diminished over the years, as his exposure to local speech patterns has improved his pronunciation and expanded his vocabulary beyond the textbook German that characterized his early attempts at cross-cultural communication. His understanding of local culture runs deeper than many adults who've lived here much longer, but maintained social relationships primarily within German administrative communities that recreate familiar patterns rather than engaging seriously with local. He's your closest friend, a relationship that would have been unthinkable in your parents' generation, but feels entirely natural in yours, representing the kind of personal connection that makes political integration feel like genuine community building rather than administrative convenience imposed by imperial authority. Your friendship has developed through shared academic interests, similar senses of humor, and complementary personality traits that would create affinity regardless of ethnic background or political circumstances. But your friendship also reflects the particular circumstances of growing up under German rule, where French students benefit from demonstrating positive relationships with German families, while German students gain credibility within local communities through friendships that suggest cultural sensitivity rather than ethnic superiority. Both of you have learned to navigate the complex social dynamics of integration while maintaining the genuine affection that makes friendship rewarding rather than merely strategic. The conversations you share range from typical teenage topics about academic pressures, social relationships, and future plans to more complex discussions about identity, belonging, and responsibility that reflect the particular challenges facing your generation. Hans understands the difficulty of balancing family traditions with imperial requirements, because his own family faces similar challenges from the opposite direction, trying to maintain German cultural identity while adapting to life in a predominantly French cultural environment. Your friendship also serves educational purposes for both families, providing opportunities to understand different cultural perspectives without the formal structure of official integration programs that can feel artificial or politically motivated. Through casual conversations and shared activities, you've both gained insights into different ways of thinking about family relationships, individual responsibility, cultural tradition, and political loyalty that inform your understanding of the complex European society you're growing up. Did you finish the essay on European integration? Hans asks in German, the language you typically use when others might be listening, because German fluency is noted and appreciated by teachers and administrators who evaluate student progress not only through formal exams, but also through observation of daily behavior and casual conversation that demonstrates internalization of educational objectives rather than mere compliance with academic requirements. It's not that French is forbidden among students, and official policy explicitly encourages bilingual development that preserves local cultural knowledge while building continental communication capabilities. But German fluency opens doors to advanced educational opportunities, preferred university placements and career prospects that require demonstration of complete cultural integration rather than simply academic achievement within existing local educational frameworks. Students quickly learn to code switch based on audience and context, using German for conversations that might be overheard by authority figures while maintaining French for personal discussions that express feelings, family relationships, and cultural perspectives that translate poorly across linguistic and political. This linguistic behavior becomes automatic rather than conscious, creating habits of thought and expression that shape personality development in ways that previous generations couldn't have anticipated. You nod, though the assignment had troubled you more than you care to admit, requiring mental gymnastics that feel increasingly uncomfortable as your analytical capabilities develop beyond simple repetition of official interpretation. Writing about the benefits of cultural unification under German leadership requires a careful balance between genuine analysis that demonstrates intellectual sophistication and expected enthusiasm that proves political reliability and emotional commitment to imperial. Too little enthusiasm, and you risk being marked as uncommitted to the new European project, potentially affecting not only grades, but also recommendations for advanced studies and future career opportunities that depend on demonstrated loyalty rather than pure academic. Too much enthusiasm feels like betrayal of something essential about yourself, though you're not entirely sure what that something might be, or why maintaining it should matter more than securing practical advantages through strategic adaptation to current realities. The assignment asked students to analyze specific examples of successful cultural integration from throughout German-controlled territories, comparing integration methods that have proven most effective in different regions, while identifying common principles that could be applied to future expansion of the European system into territories that haven't yet been brought under German administration. The research required reading reports from government officials, academic studies conducted by German universities, and testimonials from local populations who have benefited from integration programs that provide educational opportunities, economic development, and social services superior to what previous governments. The evidence genuinely supports conclusions about the benefits of systematic administration compared to the chaos and inefficiency that characterized pre-war European political. But writing the essay also required analyzing integration challenges and resistance movements that have emerged in various territories, with particular attention to understanding how such problems can be prevented or resolved through improved administrative techniques, rather than questioned as evidence that integration itself might be problematic or illegitimate, regardless of its practical. The assignment implicitly demanded acceptance of fundamental assumptions about German leadership and European unity that couldn't be questioned without violating academic expectations and political boundaries that determine educational. Critical thinking was encouraged within carefully defined parameters that excluded examination of whether current political arrangements serve European peoples optimally or merely serve German interests effectively, while providing enough benefits to conquered populations to maintain stability and cooperation. You found yourself writing sentences that expressed ideas you weren't sure you believed, while avoiding topics that interested you most, creating the kind of intellectual compromise that academic success increasingly seems to. The essay demonstrated analytical capability and cultural knowledge, while staying safely within ideological boundaries that ensure positive evaluation by teachers who must balance educational effectiveness with political loyalty in their own professional advancement within the German administrative. The school building looms ahead, a massive structure built in the years immediately following the war as part of the comprehensive program to create educational facilities worthy of the new European order, while demonstrating German commitment to providing conquered populations with superior institutional resources, compared to what previous governments. The building is designed to impress, with towering columns that rise 4 stories above the main entrance. and vast windows that flood the interior with natural light while creating internal spaces that feel both monumental and... The architecture speaks of permanence, of an institution built to last centuries rather than decades, communicating through stone and steel that current political arrangements represent fundamental reordering of European civilization rather than temporary military occupation that might be reversed through changing political circumstances or renewed military. The builders used techniques developed for constructing government buildings in Berlin, adapted to Parisian architectural traditions through consultation with local architects who understood regional aesthetic preferences and construction methods suited to local climate and geological. The foundation extends 20 feet below ground level, providing structural stability, calculated to withstand earthquakes, flooding, and other natural disasters, while creating basement spaces that can serve multiple educational and administrative purposes as enrollment and program requirements change. The walls are constructed using steel reinforcement techniques that ensure the building will remain functional for at least 100 years, while requiring minimal maintenance compared to older construction methods that characterized previous French educational art. The main entrance is flanked by sculptural representations of European cultural achievements, with figures representing different artistic, scientific, and intellectual traditions working together on projects that symbolize continental cooperation under German. The sculptures are carved from stone quarried in the Rhineland, but finished by artists who understand both German aesthetic principles and French sculptural traditions, creating works that honor European cultural diversity while emphasizing themes of unity and... Above the entrance, inscriptions in both German and French announce the school's dedication to excellence through order and unity through knowledge, mottos that capture the educational philosophy underlying German reform of European instruction methods. The inscriptions are carved in letters sized to ensure visibility from the street, while maintaining aesthetic proportions that complement the building's overall architectural. The building's exterior includes decorative elements that reflect local cultural traditions, while incorporating German design principles that emphasize functionality alongside aesthetic. Windows are positioned to maximize natural lighting, while creating sightlines that allow administrative oversight of internal activities, without creating prison-like atmosphere that could undermine educational. The entrance plaza is landscaped with plants native to the Parisian region, but arranged according to geometric patterns that reflect German preferences for systematic organization of naturals. Students stream through the main entrance in orderly groups that reflect both German organizational preferences and the natural social dynamics of adolescent peer. The flow of student traffic has been calculated to minimize congestion, while ensuring that everyone can enter and exit efficiently during the brief periods between class sessions when hundreds of young people must move through shared spaces simultaneously. The entrance doors themselves are made from oak harvested in German forests, but carved with decorative patterns that echo traditional French woodworking techniques, creating architectural elements that suggest synthesis rather than replacement of local artists. The doors are designed to last 50 years under heavy daily use, while requiring minimal maintenance, beyond periodic cleaning and refinishing that can be performed by school maintenance staff using standard equipment. Their conversations create a polyglot mixture of German, French, and occasionally other languages, from families that have relocated from across the German sphere of influence seeking better economic opportunities, educational advancement, or simply escape from regions where military conflict, ethnic tensions, or economic disruption have made life difficult. The linguistic diversity represents both the success of German integration policies and the displacement of populations that imperial expansion has created throughout Europe and colonial. There are Polish students whose families moved west for better opportunities in German industrial centers that offer employment, housing, and educational prospects superior to what remained available in territories where political resistance to German rule has limited economic development and infrastructure. These families often maintain cultural traditions that they couldn't practice openly in their home regions, while adapting to new economic and social conditions that require learning German customs and administrative. Czech students whose parents work in the new administrative offices that coordinate economic activity across the European system, translating between local needs and imperial requirements while ensuring that regional development serves both local populations and continental strategic. These administrative positions require cultural sensitivity combined with systematic efficiency, creating career opportunities for educated Europeans who can bridge different traditions while serving German organizations. Even a few Italian students, whose families have business connections with German firms that facilitate trade between Mediterranean regions and Northern European industrial centers, creating commercial relationships that provide prosperity for Italian merchants while ensuring that Mediterranean resources and markets serve German economy. These families often maintain residences in both Italy and German territory, creating transnational lifestyles that reflect the economic integration that German victory has made possible across Europeans. The main hallway is lined with portraits of German philosophers, scientists, and military leaders, interspersed with images representing the various peoples now united under German leadership. It's a visual representation of the new European hierarchy, subtle but Goethe hangs beside Molière, but Goethe's portrait is larger and more prominently displayed. Your first class is Advanced Mathematics, taught by Herr Professor Kant, a man who brings Prussian precision to the teaching of calculus and geometric principles. The classroom is arranged with military orderliness, desks in perfect rows, every angle precisely. Professor Kant himself is a product of the German educational system, trained in methods that emphasize discipline, accuracy, and the practical application of knowledge to serve studies. The mathematics you're learning is genuinely advanced, more sophisticated than what was typically taught to students your age in the old French system. German educational philosophy emphasizes early identification and development of talent, and resources are allocated. If you demonstrate aptitude, you'll be tracked toward advanced studies and eventual placement in the new European administrative or elite. As Professor Kant explains the principles of advanced integration, you find yourself genuinely engaged with the material. There's something satisfying about the logical progression of mathematical concepts, the way complex problems yield to systematic. It's a microcosm of the German approach to governance and social organization, and you can see why this methodology has proven so effective in managing a complex, multi-ethnic empire. But even in mathematics, ideology creeps in through the examples chosen for problems. You calculate the optimal distribution of resources across conquered territories. You determine the most efficient railway routes for moving both goods and you analyze the statistical probabilities of maintaining order across diverse ethnics. Mathematics serves the state, even when it appears purely academic. Between classes, you walk through hallways where conversations flow in multiple languages, but always return to German for any interaction with authority figures. Teachers, administrators, and visiting officials expect to be addressed in German, and students quickly learn to code switch depending. It's a linguistic dance that has become second nature, though sometimes you wonder what thoughts remain unexpressed because they don't translate well across the culture. Your second class is European History, taught by Frau Professor Müller, a German woman who moved to Paris specifically to help implement the new curriculum. The history you learn is not necessarily false, but it's carefully curated to support particular interpretations of European development and German. The Great War becomes a necessary correction to the balance of power. German victory represents the triumph of efficiency and organization over chaos and national selfishness. The textbook presents a narrative of European history that culminates logically in German leadership. The Roman Empire is presented as a precursor to modern German achievements in organization and the Holy Roman Empire is portrayed as an early attempt at the kind of continental unity that has now been properly achieved. The French Revolution is analyzed as an example of the chaos that results when order breaks down and democratic impulses override rational governance. You take careful notes, not because you necessarily agree with every interpretation, but because this is the framework within which you're expected to think and The examinations will test not just your knowledge of facts, but your ability to analyze historical developments within this particular ideological framework. Success requires internalization, or at least convincing simulation of internalization. During the lesson on the immediate aftermath of German victory, Frau Professor Möller describes the challenges of integrating diverse European populations into a unified administration. She speaks with obvious pride about German innovations in colonial administration being applied to European territories. Population surveys, language requirements, economic integration, and cultural assimilation programs are presented as enlightened policies designed to minimize conflict and maximize prosperity. The maps on the classroom walls tell their own story. Europe is color-coded according to administrative regions rather than the old national. The German heartland is shown in deep blue, with surrounding territories shaded in lighter blues and greys to indicate their degree of integration into the imperium. It's a visual representation of a continent organized according to principles of efficiency, rather than ethnic or cultural. As Frau Professor Müller discusses the benefits of standardized education across German territories, you notice one of your classmates, Marie Dubois, staring out the window with an expression you can't quite read. Marie's father was killed in the final months of the war, and her family has struggled more than most to adapt to the new order. She's brilliant, particularly in literature and philosophy, but she always seems to be holding something back in class. The lesson moves on to economic integration, and Frau Professor Müller produces statistics showing increased productivity, more efficient resource allocation, and rising living standards across territories. The numbers are impressive, and you have no reason to doubt their accuracy. Life is more prosperous now than it was during the chaos of the immediate post-war period. Trade flows freely across borders that once required complicated diplomatic. Currency is stable, infrastructure is improving, and technological innovation is accelerating. Yet something about the presentation troubles you, though you can't articulate exactly what. Perhaps it's the way alternative outcomes are never seriously considered, or the assumption that efficiency and prosperity automatically justify any particular political. You've begun to wonder about the costs that don't appear in official statistics, the losses that can't be quantified in economic terms. During the brief break between classes, you step outside into the school's central courtyard. The space is beautifully designed, with geometric gardens and carefully planned sightlines that create an atmosphere of order. Students gather in small groups, their conversations a mixture of academic discussion and typical teenage concerns about friendships, family, and plans. You're joined by a small group of friends who represent the new European reality, Immersive. Hans Weber, the German engineer's son, Marie Dubois, whose family epitomizes the French experience of adaptation, Stefan Kowalski, whose Polish family moved west for better economics, Anna Rossi, whose Italian father works in trade relations between Germany and the Mediterranean regions. The conversation naturally falls into German, the lingua franca of your generation, though French phrases creep in when you're discussing concepts that seem to express themselves more naturally in your first language. Stefan contributes occasional Polish words that have become part of your group's private vocabulary, and Anna's Italian adds musical notes to discussions of art. Are you nervous about next week? Hans asks, referring to the approaching visit from regional education officials who will observe classes and interview selected students about their progress and adjustment to the intercurriculum. Marie shrugs with practiced indifference, but you catch the slight tightening around her eyes that suggests more concern than she's. These inspections have become routine, part of the ongoing effort to ensure that educational integration is proceeding. Students are questioned about their language proficiency, their understanding of German cultural values, and their commitment to the new European project. It's just a formality, Stefan says, though his tone suggests he's trying to convince himself as much. His family's status is still somewhat precarious, dependent on his father's continued employment and the family's demonstrated loyalty to German administrative policies. Anna changes the subject to weekend plans, and the conversation shifts to more typical teenage concerns. There's a new film showing at the cinema, a German production with French subtitles that promises romance. The local youth orchestra is preparing a concert featuring both German and French composers, presented as an example of successful cultural synthesis. As you listen to your friends discuss these normal activities, you're struck by how ordinary your life feels, despite the extraordinary historical circumstances that shaped it. You're not living in some dystopian nightmare, nor in some You're simply navigating adolescence within the particular constraints and opportunities of your historical moment, much as teenagers have always done. The bell rings, calling you back to class for European literature, taught by Professor Heinrich Bauer, a man who embodies the intellectual ambitions of the new. Professor Bauer is genuinely brilliant, fluent in multiple European languages, and passionate about literature's power to bridge cultural divides while reinforcing views. Today's lesson focuses on the concept of European identity as expressed through literature. You're studying excerpts from German, French, Italian, and Polish authors, all selected to demonstrate common themes that transcend narrow. The reading list includes Goethe's reflections on European culture, Hugo's meditations on human nature, Dante's vision of moral order, and Mickiewicz's poetry about home longing. Professor Bauer guides the discussion with skillful questions that encourage students to find connections between authors from different traditions, while gradually leading toward conclusions that support the current political. It's not crude propaganda, but rather sophisticated intellectual work that genuinely illuminates literary themes while serving ideology. What do you notice about how these authors conceive of identity? Professor asks. Do they see themselves primarily as products of narrow local traditions, or as participants in broader European civilization? The discussion that follows is genuinely engaging. Students contribute insights drawn from their own multilingual, multicultural experiences. Marie offers a particularly thoughtful analysis of how Hugo's characters struggle with competing loyalties, though she's careful to frame her comments in ways that don't challenge the legitimacy of German leadership. You find yourself drawn into the intellectual exercise despite your occasional discomfort with its underlying assumptions. There's real wisdom in these texts, genuine insight into human nature and social organization. The fact that they're being used to support a particular political system doesn't necessarily invalidate their artistic or philosophical value. As the discussion progresses, you notice how skillfully Professor Bauer acknowledges cultural differences while emphasizing shared human experiences that make political unity both possible and desirable. It's a sophisticated argument, more convincing than crude assertions of German superiority would be. The case being made is not that German culture should replace all others, but that German leadership provides the best framework for allowing all European cultures to flourish in harmony. The class period concludes with Professor Bauer assigning an essay on the theme of unity and diversity in European literature. You're asked to select works from at least 3 different national traditions and argue for how they contribute to a shared European cultural heritage that transcends political boundaries. It's exactly the kind of assignment that requires you to internalize the intellectual framework of the new order while demonstrating your sophistication as a young European intellectual. As students gather their materials and prepare to leave, Professor Bauer approaches your desk. "I've been impressed with your contributions to our discussions," he says quietly. "Have you given thought to your plans for advanced studies?" The question carries weight beyond its surface meaning. Professor Bauer is suggesting that you might be a candidate for the competitive programs that train the future leadership of the German European system. It's an honor and an opportunity that would open doors to prestigious universities, promising career prospects and influence within the new continental order. "I'm still considering my options, Professor," you reply carefully. It's an honest answer that avoids committing to anything while maintaining respectful interest in his suggestion. "Of course," he nods, "but don't wait too long. The selection process begins early, and the opportunities for young people with your capabilities are quite remarkable in our new Europe." As you leave the classroom, you're aware that a significant moment has just occurred. You're being identified as potential leadership material. which brings both opportunities and responsibilities that you're not sure you're ready to embrace. The path Professor Bauer is suggesting would lead toward full integration into the German European elite, a trajectory that would ensure your prosperity and influence while requiring complete identification with the system you'd be serving. The lunch period provides a brief respite from the intensity of academic focus. The school's dining hall reflects the same principles of order and efficiency that govern everything else in your world. Students move through serving lines with practiced discipline, receiving portions that are nutritious and adequate without being excessive. The food is good, better than what many families can provide at home. Another example of how institutional life under German administration often surpasses private alternatives. You sit with your usual group of friends, and the conversation naturally turns to Professor Bauer's suggestion about advanced studies. Hans is envious. His grades are good but not exceptional, and his future likely lies in following his father into technical or administrative work rather than rising to the intellectual elite. You should definitely apply, Stefan urges. My uncle works in the Eastern Territories Administration, and he says the opportunities for advancement are incredible if you can get into the right programs. Marie remains quiet during this discussion, picking at her food with obvious discomfort. You suspect she's torn between recognition that such opportunities represent genuine achievement and concern about what embracing them might mean for her sense of self and loyalty to her family's pre-war identity. Anna takes a more practical view. It's not as if you're betraying anything, she points out. These are real opportunities to shape the future. If people like us don't take leadership roles, then leadership will be left entirely to others who might not understand the complexities of integration as well as we do. It's a sophisticated argument that reflects the kind of thinking your generation has developed to navigate these moral complexities. Rather than seeing collaboration as betrayal, Anna frames participation in the German system as a way of ensuring that non-German perspectives have some influence within the new order. The afternoon classes continue with physical education, conducted according to principles that emphasize both individual fitness and group coordination. The exercises are designed to build strength, endurance, and discipline while fostering the kind of group cohesion that serves both military and civilian purposes. You run, jump, and coordinate with classmates in activities that are genuinely enjoyable while subtly reinforcing lessons about hierarchy, cooperation, and collective achievement. The final class of the day is practical sciences, where you learn skills that will serve you regardless of your eventual career path. Today's lesson involves electrical systems, taught with the hands-on methodology that German education emphasizes. You work with actual equipment, learning to diagnose problems and implement solutions through systematic analysis rather than trial and error. Herr Professor Schmidt, who teaches the class, is a veteran of the war who lost his left arm in the final offensive that secured German victory. He never speaks about his combat experience, but his teaching reflects the kind of practical problem-solving that military necessity develops. Every lesson emphasizes the importance of reliable, efficient solutions that work under pressure. As you work with electrical circuits, you're struck by how the principles you're learning apply far beyond technical systems. The careful analysis of inputs and outputs, the systematic identification of failure points, the emphasis on redundancy and reliability, these same concepts appear in the administrative and social systems that govern your daily life. The school day concludes with a brief assembly where announcements are made about upcoming events and opportunities. Next week's inspection is mentioned matter-of-factly, described as a routine review that will help ensure students are receiving the best possible education. There's no sense of threat or anxiety in the official presentation, just administrative efficiency applied to educational oversight. As students are dismissed, you gather your materials and prepare for the walk home. The afternoon light slants through the tall windows of the school hallway, illuminating dust motes that dance in the air with no regard for human political arrangements. It's a reminder that, beneath all the systems and structures that govern your life, ordinary physical reality continues according to its own rules. The walk home takes you through different neighborhoods than your morning route, providing a broader view of how the city has changed under German administration. You pass construction sites, where new apartment buildings rise to house the growing population of German settlers and relocated populations from other parts of the empire. The architecture is functional rather than beautiful, designed to provide adequate housing efficiently rather than to inspire aesthetic appreciation. You also pass older neighborhoods where French families have lived for generations, their buildings showing signs of careful maintenance despite economic constraints. These areas have a different character, more organic in their development, reflecting the accumulated decisions of centuries rather than the planned efficiency of recent construction. At a newsstand, you pause to scan the headlines of both German and French publications. The German papers emphasize economic progress, technological innovation, and successful integration policies. The French papers, while officially supportive of the current government, focus more on local issues, cultural events, and human interest stories that maintain some connection to pre-war traditions. An elderly man at the newsstand nods to you politely. You recognize him as someone who occasionally spoke with your grandfather before the old man's death 2 years ago. There's something in his expression that suggests he sees in you echoes of older generations, though he says nothing that could be interpreted as politically questionable. As you continue walking, you pass the small church where your family still attends services. The building itself predates German rule by centuries, and the current priest has managed to maintain religious observance while avoiding any conflict with political authorities. Sunday sermons focus on personal morality, community responsibility, and spiritual growth rather than social or political commentary. The evening routine at home follows the same careful patterns that structure all aspects of life in your world. Your father returns from work with stories of successful urban planning projects and efficient resource allocation. Your mother shares news from neighbors and friends, always careful to frame any potential complaints as minor inconveniences rather than systematic problems. Dinner conversation includes discussion of your day at school, with particular attention to Professor Bauer's suggestion about advanced studies. Your parents exchange glances that communicate more than their words express. They're proud of your academic success, but uncertain about what embracing the opportunities it might provide would mean for the family's sense of identity and continuity with their pre-war life. It would be a tremendous opportunity, your father says carefully, the kind of education and career prospects that simply weren't available before. Your mother nods but adds, "Of course, you must make whatever decision feels right for your future. We trust your judgment." The conversation is loving and supportive, while avoiding direct discussion of the political and cultural implications of the choice you're facing. It's another example of the careful navigation that characterizes family life under the current system. Loyalty to family traditions must be balanced against recognition of new realities and opportunities. As evening settles over the city, you complete your homework assignments with the same methodical attention to detail that characterizes everything in your academic life. The essay on European literature requires careful thought about how to present genuine insights while staying within acceptable interpretive boundaries. The mathematics problems are straightforward applications of principles learned in class. The science assignment involves documenting your observations from the day's electrical experiments. Before sleep, you stand at your bedroom window looking out over the city that has been your home for your entire remembered life. The streets are quiet, lit by electric lamps that provide reliable illumination according to schedules established by municipal efficiency experts. Occasionally you see late evening patrols, not ominous in any obvious way, but present enough to remind everyone that order is maintained through active oversight rather than simply assumed. In the distance, you can see the lights of the government buildings, where the business of administering this corner of the German Empire continues around the clock. There's something both impressive and unsettling about the systematic efficiency of it all. The old chaos has been replaced by reliable order, but you sometimes wonder about the things that have been lost in the process. As you prepare for sleep, your mind returns to Professor Bauer's suggestion about your future. The opportunity he's offering is real and valuable. The education would be excellent, the career prospects genuinely exciting, and the chance to participate in shaping the future of European civilization is not something to dismiss lightly. Yet something in you hesitates. Though you can't articulate exactly what concerns you, perhaps it's simply the normal anxiety that accompanies any major life decision, or perhaps it's some deeper intuition about the costs of success within any particular system, no matter how benevolent that system might appear. You fall asleep to the sound of distant train whistles, a reminder that you live at the hub of a vast transportation network that connects this city to Berlin, Vienna, Prague, and dozens of other centers of the new European order. It's a sound that speaks of connection, opportunity, and the movement of people and goods across a continent that has been unified under German leadership. But sometimes in the moments between waking and sleeping, you imagine you can hear older sounds beneath the efficient rhythm of the modern world. Echoes of different kinds of music, different patterns of speech, different ways of organizing human life that existed before the current system proved its superiority through military victory and administrative efficiency. These are not thoughts you would share with anyone, not even your closest friends. They're probably just the normal nostalgia that young people sometimes feel for times they never actually experienced. But as you drift towards sleep, you carry with you a vague sense that your generation is living at a historical crossroads, making choices that will determine not just your individual futures, but the shape of European civilization for decades to come. The last thought in your conscious mind is a question that has no easy answer. In a world where efficiency, order, and prosperity have been achieved through methods you didn't choose but have learned to navigate, what do you owe to the past, the present, and the future? It's a question that will follow you into tomorrow, when the careful routine of your new European life continues with its mixture of genuine opportunities and unexamined constraints. You wake to the sound of boots in the hallway outside your family's apartment. Not the ordinary footsteps of neighbors, beginning their morning routines with the familiar rhythm of people who know their buildings and their schedules, but the precise, synchronized march of military personnel, whose training emphasizes coordination, efficiency, and the kind of systematic movement that demonstrates institutional authority through physical discipline and collective precision. The sound penetrates through walls that were never designed to provide complete acoustic privacy, carrying with it implications that every resident in the building immediately recognizes, despite years of successful adaptation to the new order. These are not the boots of local police officers conducting routine patrols, nor the footsteps of German administrators walking to morning appointments, but the deliberate cadence of personnel conducting official business that requires immediate attention and complete cooperation from anyone whose activities might be subject to review. Through your thin curtains, you can see black automobiles parked along the street below, their engines still running with exhaust, visible in the cool morning air that carries the scent of burning fuel mixed with the ordinary smells of coal heating, bread from neighborhood bakeries, and the chemical tang of street cleaning solutions that mark the beginning of another systematically organized day in the German administration of Paris. The automobiles themselves are manufactured in German factories, according to specifications that prioritize reliability and durability over comfort or aesthetic appeal, designed to transport officials efficiently across urban environments, while communicating through their presence the systematic nature of imperial oversight. The fact that engines remain running suggests that whatever business brought these vehicles to your neighborhood is expected to conclude quickly, either because cooperation will be immediate or because resistance will be dealt with through methods that don't require extended negotiation. Your mother appears in your doorway, her face carefully composed in the expression of calm alertness that adults in your family have perfected over 7 years of living under circumstances that require constant attention to social and political dynamics that can change without warning. Her eyes carry the particular kind of warning that you've learned to read instantaneously. Communication that passes between family members who understand that certain kinds of information must be shared immediately, while other topics must be avoided completely until circumstances change. "Get dressed quickly," she says in French, then switches to German with the automatic linguistic adjustment that has become second nature for families navigating daily life in bilingual environments where language choice can affect how interactions are interpreted by people whose opinions might influence family security and opportunity. School inspection today. They've moved it up. The change in schedule should not matter in any practical sense, since inspections are routine administrative procedures designed to ensure that educational standards are maintained consistently across all territories while identifying opportunities for improvement in instructional methods, facility management, and student development programs. Routine inspections feel manageable, predictable, part of the normal rhythm of life under the current system that balances oversight with respect for local autonomy within carefully defined boundaries. But somehow the change does matter, creating psychological tension that reflects deeper anxieties about the relationship between individual security and institutional authority that characterizes life under any system where personal well-being depends on maintaining favor with distant officials whose decision-making processes remain largely invisible to those affected by their choices. Surprise inspections carry different implications, suggesting that someone somewhere has identified a problem requiring immediate attention rather than routine administrative review. The fact that the inspection has been moved up could indicate any number of possibilities, from routine scheduling adjustments necessitated by administrative convenience to specific concerns about educational effectiveness, political loyalty, or cultural integration that have prompted closer examination of particular schools, teachers, or student population. Without additional information, your family must prepare for multiple scenarios, while avoiding speculation that could create unnecessary anxiety or inappropriate responses to what might be entirely routine administrative activity. You dress with extra care, ensuring that every button is properly fastened according to regulations that specify not only which buttons must be closed, but also the sequence in which clothing should be put on to ensure maximum efficiency and appropriate appearance. Every crease is precisely placed, according to standards that German efficiency experts have determined create the optimal balance between professional appearance and practical functionality for students who must move quickly between different classroom environments while maintaining dignity and respect for institutional authority. Your school uniform has never felt more like armor than it does this morning, providing both psychological protection through conformity with expected standards and physical comfort through well-designed materials and careful tailoring that accommodate the nervous energy that accompanies periods of heightened attention from administrative authorities. The uniform transforms you from a private individual with personal concerns and family loyalties into a public representative of the new European educational system whose behavior reflects not only on yourself, but on the integration policies that your success or failure will be used to evaluate. As you gather your materials, you double-check that everything in your satchel belongs there, according to both official regulations and the informal wisdom that students share about avoiding situations that could be misinterpreted during periods when normal social interactions take on additional significance. No forgotten items could be misinterpreted or raise unwanted questions about your activities, interests, or family background that might complicate what should be routine educational assessment. Your textbooks are arranged in the precise order specified by school regulation, with German text on top to demonstrate proper respect for imperial language requirements, while French materials remain easily accessible for bilingual instruction that acknowledges local cultural traditions within the framework of continental educational standards. Your writing materials include only pens, pencils, and paper approved for student use, avoiding any items that could suggest interests or activities outside the boundaries of appropriate academic focus. The leather satchel itself, a gift from your grandmother before she passed away 2 years ago, represents one of the few connections to pre-war family traditions that you carry into the German educational environment. Made by French craftsmen, according to techniques passed down through generations of artisans who understood both durability and aesthetic appeal, the satchel has survived years of daily use while maintaining the appearance of quality and care that German efficiency experts appreciate, even when it reflects different cultural values than those officially promoted. But carrying items with obvious pre-war origins also creates potential complications during periods of heightened administrative attention, when every detail of student behavior and family background receives closer scrutiny than routine educational assessment typically requires. Your grandmother's satchel could be interpreted as evidence of appropriate family continuity with positive traditions, or as suggestion of excessive attachment to political arrangements that German administration has replaced with superior alternatives. The walk to school reveals that the inspection is larger in scope than usual. Additional black cars are parked throughout the neighborhood, and you notice men in long coats standing at strategic intersections, observing the flow of people and traffic with professional attention. It's not threatening exactly, but it's unmistakably more thorough than routine oversight. Hans meets you at your usual corner, his face reflecting the same controlled anxiety you're feeling. "My father heard at the office that this is related to some kind of security review," he says quietly. "Nothing specific, just making sure everything is proceeding according to standards." Stefan and Anna join you as you approach the school, both unusually quiet. Even Marie, who normally maintains perfect composure regardless of circumstances, seems more guarded than usual. The group of friends that typically chats easily about homework and weekend plans walks in relative silence, each lost in private calculations about potential vulnerability. The school building itself appears transformed by the presence of additional officials. Men in uniform and civilian clothes move through the hallways with clipboards and folders, observing classes, interviewing teachers, and reviewing administrative records. The normal flow of student life continues, but under heightened scrutiny that makes every interaction feel potentially significant. Professor Kant begins the morning mathematics lesson as if nothing unusual is occurring, though you notice his explanations are more formal than usual, more carefully structured to demonstrate pedagogical excellence. The problems he assigns are drawn from approved textbooks rather than the supplementary materials he sometimes uses to challenge advanced students. During the lesson, 2 officials enter the classroom and take seats at the back. They don't interrupt or participate, but their presence changes the atmosphere in subtle ways. Students become more careful about their questions, more precise in their answers. Professor Kant's teaching becomes slightly more performative, emphasizing his adherence to established methodology. As you work through calculus problems involving resource optimization across theoretical territories, you're acutely aware that your work is being observed not just by your teacher, but by representatives of the system that will ultimately determine your future opportunities. Every calculation, every written explanation becomes a small demonstration of your competence and reliability. Between classes, the hallway conversations are more subdued than usual. Students move with greater purposefulness, avoiding anything that could be interpreted as disruptive or inappropriate. The easy, multilingual chatter that normally characterizes student interaction becomes more careful, with German dominating even private conversations between friends. European history class proceeds under similar conditions, with Frau Professor Müller delivering her lesson on economic integration with particular attention to the benefits of German administrative methods. The presence of observers seems to energize her presentation, and she speaks with even greater enthusiasm about the successful transformation of European society under enlightened German leadership. During the lesson, one of the officials approaches your desk and quietly requests that you gather your materials and accompany him to the administrative office. It's done politely, without drama, but every student in the classroom notices. You pack your satchel with steady hands, nod respectfully to Frau Professor Müller, and follow the official into the hallway. The walk to the administrative office feels longer than it actually is. You review everything you've said, written, or done in recent weeks, searching for anything that could have attracted attention. Your grades are excellent, your behavior exemplary, your participation in class discussions appropriately enthusiastic. Yet something has prompted this individual attention. The administrative office has been transformed into a temporary interview center. Several desks have been arranged with chairs facing each other, and you can see other students from various classes engaged in quiet conversations with officials. The atmosphere is professional, rather than threatening, but the implications are unmistakable. This is not routine educational assessment, but something more consequential. You're directed to a desk where a middle-aged man in civilian clothes sits with a thick folder and several sheets of paper. He introduces himself as Inspector Hoffman from the Regional Education Authority and explains that he's conducting interviews with selected students to assess the effectiveness of the integrated curriculum and identify particularly promising young people for advanced opportunities. Your academic records are quite impressive, Inspector Hoffman begins, consulting the papers before him. Excellent marks in all subjects, strong participation in class discussions, and teachers report that you demonstrate both intellectual capability and proper attitude toward the new European educational system. You thank him politely and wait to see where the conversation will lead. Inspector Hoffman's approach seems genuinely positive, focused on opportunity rather than investigation. but you've learned to be cautious about making assumptions based on initial impressions. I'm particularly interested in your perspective on cultural integration, Inspector Hoffman continues. As someone who has grown up during the transition period, you have unique insights into how the new system affects young people from different backgrounds. It's a sophisticated question that requires careful navigation. Inspector Hoffman is asking you to reflect on your own experience while demonstrating appropriate understanding of official policy objectives. Your answer will need to be honest enough to be credible, while supportive enough to avoid raising concerns about your reliability. I think my generation has been fortunate to grow up with exposure to multiple European traditions, you begin carefully. The integrated curriculum has given us perspectives that previous generations couldn't access. We can read German philosophy and French literature, understand both Prussian efficiency and Mediterranean creativity. Inspector Hoffman nods approvingly and makes notes while you speak. And how do you see this broader education serving your future goals? The question moves into more personal territory, asking you to articulate ambitions that align with the system's objectives. You've given this considerable thought since Professor Bauer's suggestion about advanced studies, but articulating it under these circumstances carries additional weight. I believe the future belongs to people who can bridge different traditions while serving the common European interest, you reply. Whether in administration, education, or technical fields, the challenges of continental integration require people who understand complexity while maintaining commitment to the principles that make unity possible. It's a sophisticated answer that demonstrates both intellectual capability and ideological alignment, exactly what Inspector Hoffman appears to be seeking. He makes additional notes and asks several follow-up questions about your family background, your language capabilities, and your understanding of current political and economic development. As the interview progresses, you realize that this is indeed related to selection for advanced educational opportunity. Inspector Hoffman explains that the Regional Education Authority is identifying students for placement in specialized programs designed to train the next generation of European leadership. The selection process is highly competitive, but your academic record and demonstrated adaptability make you a strong candidate. These programs provide access to the finest universities in Germany and preparation for leadership roles throughout the European system, Inspector Hoffman explains. Students who complete these programs typically advance to positions of significant responsibility in government, education, business, or technical fields. The opportunity is genuinely impressive, exactly what Professor Bauer had suggested might be available. Advanced education at prestigious institutions, guaranteed career prospects, and the chance to participate in shaping the future of European civilization. For a 16-year-old student, it represents everything that academic success is supposed to provide. But Inspector Hoffman's next question introduces complications you hadn't fully anticipated. Such positions require absolute reliability and commitment to the European project. Students selected for these programs undergo additional screening to ensure their suitability for sensitive responsibility. Are there any aspects of your background or family situation that might raise questions about your complete dedication to serving the new order? The question hangs in the air like a test of your character and judgment. Inspector Hoffman's tone remains friendly and professional, but you understand that your answer will determine not just your eligibility for advanced programs, but potentially your family's continued standing within the system. You think about your grandfather, who died 2 years ago, but whose influence continues to shape your family's private conversation. A veteran of the old French army, he never fully accepted German victory and occasionally expressed opinions that would be considered problematic if reported to authorities. Your parents maintain respectful public support for the current system while preserving private loyalty to pre-war memories and values. My family has adapted successfully to the new European system, you answer carefully. My parents work productively within German administrative structures, and we participate fully in community activities. I believe complete dedication to European unity is not just a requirement, but a genuine opportunity to serve something larger than narrow local interests. Inspector Hoffman studies your face as you speak, and you sense that he's evaluating not just your words, but your demeanor, your confidence, your apparent sincerity. After a moment, he makes additional notes and moves on to questions about your peer relationships and your observations of how other students are adjusting to the integrated educational environment. The conversation continues for nearly 30 minutes, covering topics that range from academic interests to personal aspirations to political opinions. Throughout, you maintain the careful balance between honesty and discretion that has become second nature for your generation. You express genuine enthusiasm for opportunities while avoiding anything that could be interpreted as criticism of current arrangements. When the interview concludes, Inspector Hoffman indicates that you'll receive notification about the advanced program selection within the next few weeks. He emphasizes that regardless of the outcome, your academic performance and attitude demonstrate exactly the kind of development the new educational system is designed to foster. As you return to class, you're aware that something significant has just occurred. The interview represents both recognition of your achievements and evaluation of your suitability for integration into the upper levels of the German European system. Your answers may have determined not just your individual future, but your family's long-term security and prosperity. The remainder of the school day proceeds under continued observation, though the atmosphere gradually returns to something approaching normality. By the afternoon, most of the additional officials have departed, leaving behind only the sense that everyone and everything has been assessed according to standards that remain largely invisible to those being evaluated. During the final class period, you notice that several other students appear to have been interviewed, though nobody discusses the experience openly. Marie seems particularly subdued, and you wonder whether her family background created complications that yours did not. Stefan appears confident, while Anna looks thoughtful rather than troubled. As school concludes, Hans approaches you quietly. "How did it go?" he asks, though you both understand that such conversations must be carefully conducted even among close friends. "Routine questions about academic progress and future plans," you reply, which is accurate if incomplete. "They seem to be identifying students for advanced opportunities." Hans nods with obvious disappointment. He wasn't selected for individual interviews, which suggests that his academic performance, while solid, hasn't marked him for the kind of accelerated advancement being offered to others. It's a reminder that, even within the new system's emphasis on merit and opportunity, not everyone will have access to the highest levels of education and responsibility. The walk home takes you through streets that look the same as they did this morning, but feel somehow different. The inspection has served as a reminder that your normal routine exists within a larger system of oversight and evaluation. The sense of ordinary teenage life pursuing its normal course has been replaced by awareness that every aspect of your development is being monitored and assessed according to criteria that extend far beyond academic achievement. At home, your parents are waiting with carefully controlled expressions that indicate they're aware something significant occurred at school today. Your father's connections within the city planning office have provided enough information for him to understand that today's inspection was more comprehensive than usual, though he may not know all the details. "How was school today?" your mother asks with studied casuality. You describe the inspection and your interview with Inspector Hoffman, emphasizing the positive aspects while being careful not to overstate your confidence about the outcome. Your parents listen with the kind of attention that indicates they understand the implications better than they're willing to express directly. "It sounds like a remarkable opportunity," your father says finally, "the kind of education and career prospects that were simply unimaginable before the current system." Your mother nods but adds quietly, "Of course, such opportunities often come with significant expectations and responsibilities." The observation hangs in the air as a gentle reminder that advancement within any system requires ongoing commitment to that system's values and objectives. Your parents are proud of your academic success, while remaining mindful of the choices such success might require you to make. Dinner conversation is more subdued than usual, though not uncomfortably so. Your family has learned to navigate these moments when private thoughts and public requirements don't align perfectly. You discuss your classes, your teachers' feedback, and your plans for upcoming assignments, while avoiding direct discussion of the larger implications of the day's events. As evening settles over the city, you complete your homework with particular attention to quality and presentation. Every assignment now feels like part of an ongoing evaluation that extends far beyond classroom requirements. Your essay on European literature receives extra revision to ensure that your analysis demonstrates both intellectual sophistication and appropriate ideological alignment. Before sleep, you stand again at your bedroom window, looking out over the ordered streets of your transformed. The regular patrols continue their circuits, the electric lights maintain their reliable illumination, and the distant sound of trains reminds you of the vast network of connections that link your small corner of the world to the centers of European power. But tonight the view carries additional meaning. You're no longer simply observing the system within which you live, but considering your potential role within its future development. The interview with Inspector Hoffman has marked you as someone whose choices matter, not just for your own future, but for the continuing evolution of the European project. As you prepare for sleep, your mind returns repeatedly to the questions Inspector Hoffman asked and the answers you provided. You believe you navigated the conversation successfully, demonstrating both capability and reliability. But you're also aware that you made commitments, however implicitly, that will shape the expectations others have of your future behavior and loyalty. The opportunity being offered is genuine and valuable. Advanced education, promising career prospects, and the chance to participate in important work that will affect millions of people across Europe. It represents everything that merit and achievement are supposed to provide in a properly organized society. Yet something about the day's events has left you with questions that you can't easily answer or even articulate clearly. Perhaps it's simply the normal anxiety that accompanies recognition that your childhood is ending and adult responsibilities are beginning. Or perhaps it's some deeper uncertainty about the relationship between individual choice and systemic loyalty, between personal advancement and broader obligations that can't be easily defined or. You fall asleep, knowing that your life has reached a turning point that will determine not just your individual future, but your family's continuing place within the new European order. The decisions you make in response to Inspector Hoffman's eventual notification will carry consequences that extend far beyond academic and career concerns. In your dreams, you find yourself walking through a city that seems familiar, but subtly different from the Paris you know. The streets follow the same patterns, but the buildings reflect architectural styles you can't quite identify. The people speak languages you almost but don't quite understand, and their faces carry expressions that suggest they're navigating complexities that remain just outside your comprehension. When you wake, you carry with you a vague sense that your unconscious mind is processing questions about identity, belonging, and choice that your waking thoughts haven't fully engaged. But these dream impressions fade quickly, as the demands of another day in your carefully ordered world reassert themselves, bringing with them the mixture of opportunity and obligation that has come to define your generation's experience of growing up in the new. 3 days have passed since the inspection, and the letter arrives exactly when Inspector Hoffman indicated it. The envelope bears the official seal of the Regional Education Authority, and its weight suggests multiple pages of detailed information rather than a simple acceptance or rejection. Your mother places it on the kitchen table without comment, but her careful attention to your father's expression indicates that both parents understand the significance of this moment. You open the envelope with steady hands, though your heart rate has increased noticeably. The first document is a formal letter of acceptance into the Advanced European Studies program, congratulating you on your selection and outlining the extraordinary opportunities that await. The language is warm and encouraging, emphasizing that you've been chosen for qualities that mark you as a future leader of European civilization. The second document provides detailed information about the program's. You'll complete your final 2 years of secondary education at a specialized academy in Baden-Baden, followed by guaranteed admission to the University of Berlin for advanced study in your chosen. The curriculum combines rigorous academic preparation with practical training in administration, leadership, and cross-cultural communication. The third document outlines expectations and requirements. Students accepted into the program must maintain excellent academic performance, demonstrate unwavering commitment to European integration principles, and participate in various activities designed to build loyalty and confidence. There are provisions for monitoring student progress and adjustment, with clear consequences for failure to meet programs. The final document requires signatures from both you and your parents, acknowledging your understanding of the program requirements and your commitment to fulfill all There's also a confidentiality agreement covering various aspects of the program and a statement affirming your family's complete support for your participation. As you read through the materials, your parents examine them with careful attention to detail. Your father's administrative experience makes him particularly alert to the legal and practical implications of the various requirements. Your mother focuses on the living arrangements, the provisions for family contact, and the support systems available to students. It's an incredible opportunity, your father says finally, though his tone carries notes of complexity beneath the obvious. The education alone would provide advantages that most people can only dream of. Your mother nods but adds quietly, it's also a significant commitment. 2 years away from home, followed by university study that will likely lead to career assignments throughout the German territories. The observation highlights what has become clear as you've read through the documentation. Accepting this opportunity means more than advanced education. It means full integration into the German European elite system, with all the benefits and obligations that such integration entails. You set the papers aside and walk to the window, looking out over the city where you've spent your entire conscious life. The buildings, the streets, the rhythms of daily activity have all become familiar and comfortable. Leaving for the academy would mean entering a world designed specifically to shape young people into servants of the new European. What do you think? Your mother asks. It's a question that requires consideration of factors extending far beyond personal preferences. Your individual choice will affect not only your own future, but your family's standing within the system. Declining such an honor could raise questions about your commitment and reliability, while accepting it would mark you permanently as someone whose success depends on continued loyalty to German leadership. Your parents wait patiently while you consider your. They've raised you to make thoughtful decisions, but this choice carries implications that extend far beyond typical teenage decision-making. Whatever you decide will shape not only your own future, but the continuing evolution of your family's relationship with the new European order. I need to understand something, you say. If I accept this opportunity, what happens to my connection with our family, our community, our... It's a question that goes to the heart of what this opportunity represents. The Advanced European Studies program is designed to create young people whose primary loyalty is to the continental system rather than local or ethnic communities. Students who complete the program typically pursue careers that take them far from their places of origin, serving German interests throughout Europe. And your father considers his answer. The program is designed to create leaders who can serve European civilization as a whole, he says. That doesn't necessarily mean abandoning local connections, but it does mean that your primary obligations would be to larger purposes. Your mother adds, it's not unlike what happened to young people in previous generations who pursued advanced education or prestigious careers. They often moved away from home and took on responsibilities that served broader interests than just family or local community. Both observations are accurate, but they don't fully address the deeper question about identity and belonging that underlies your. Previous generations of ambitious young people might have left home for education and careers, but they weren't being shaped specifically to serve political systems that had conquered their families' countries. You spend the next several hours walking through the neighborhood, thinking about the choice you're facing. The streets are filled with the normal activity of early evening, people returning from work, children playing in small parks, families gathering. It's a scene of ordinary life continuing under the administrative efficiency of the German system. At the small cafe where your family sometimes has Sunday coffee, you encounter Monsieur Dubois, Marie's father. He greets you politely, and you find wondering whether Marie received a similar letter of acceptance. Her academic performance is certainly excellent enough to qualify, but her family background might have created complications that yours did not. How is school proceeding for you young people? Monsieur Dubois asks, and something in his tone suggests he's aware that recent inspections have led to significant opportunities for some students. Very well, thank you, you reply carefully. The teachers are excellent and the opportunities for advanced study seem quite remarkable. Monsieur Dubois nods with an expression that might indicate approval, resignation, or some combination of both. Indeed, the current system provides educational opportunities that were not available in previous times. Young people today can pursue studies and careers that previous generations could not imagine. There's something in his phrasing that suggests he's chosen his words as carefully as you have, acknowledging benefits while avoiding any statement that could be interpreted as complete endorsement of current political arrangements. It's the kind of conversational dance that has become routine for people navigating the complexities of life under occupation that has transformed into administration. As you continue walking, you pass the small memorial garden where flowers are placed weekly in memory of those who died during the final months of the war. The memorial itself has been redesigned to honor sacrifice for European peace, rather than specifically French or German losses, another example of how the past has been recontextualized to serve present purposes. An elderly woman tends the flowers with careful attention, and you recognize her as someone who lost both her sons during the fighting. She acknowledges you with a brief nod, and you wonder what she thinks of young people like yourself who have grown up accepting as normal the system that emerged from that period of devastating loss. When you return home, you find your parents engaged in quiet conversation that stops when you enter the room. Their expressions suggest they've been discussing your situation and perhaps reaching their own conclusions about what choice would be best for both you and the family. "Have you had time to think about your decision?" your father asks. You nod and take a seat at the kitchen table, where the acceptance materials still lie exactly where you left them. The official documents represent a future that is both attractive and problematic, offering genuine opportunities while requiring commitments that feel somehow larger than you're prepared to make. "I think I need to understand better what accepting would mean for our family," you say. "Not just the practical arrangements, but the deeper implications for who we are and what we represent." Your mother smiles with obvious pride in your thoughtfulness, while your father nods with the kind of respect that indicates he recognizes you're grappling seriously with complex questions that have no easy answers. Accepting would mean that your future success depends on serving the German European system effectively, your father explains. That's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if that system continues to provide stability and prosperity. But it does mean that your primary loyalties would shift toward continental rather than local interests. Your mother adds, "It would also mean that our family's security becomes tied to your continued success within that system. If you prosper, we prosper. If you encounter difficulties or fall out of favor, the consequences could affect all of us." Both observations highlight aspects of the situation that extend far beyond individual educational opportunity. Your choice will determine not only your personal future, but your family's long-term relationship with the power structure that governs their daily lives. As you consider these implications, you realize that you're facing a decision that previous generations couldn't have imagined. Young people throughout history have often been required to choose between local loyalties and broader opportunities, but few have faced choices so clearly connected to fundamental questions about political legitimacy and cultural identity. The evening meal proceeds with more thoughtful conversation about practical aspects of the decision. Your parents explain financial implications, discuss the logistics of maintaining family contact during your studies, and consider how your absence might affect household dynamics. Throughout, they maintain careful neutrality about what choice you should make, while providing information that will help you make an informed decision. After dinner, you retreat to your room to complete homework assignments that feel somehow less important than they did a few days ago. The questions about European literature and mathematical optimization techniques seem routine compared to the choice you're confronting about your own future role in European society. As you work, you find yourself thinking about your classmates and wondering how many received similar offers. Hans almost certainly did not, given his solid but unexceptional academic performance. Marie's situation remains unclear, though her family background might have created complications that yours avoided. Stefan and Anna both seem like candidates, though you have no way of knowing without direct conversation that could be interpreted as inappropriate sharing of confidential information. The homework assignments themselves take on different meaning when considered in light of the opportunity you're contemplating. The essay on cultural integration becomes an exercise in articulating ideas that you might soon be expected to promote professionally. The mathematics problems involving resource allocation across territories become relevant to work you might actually be doing in administrative or technical roles. Before sleep, you spend additional time at your bedroom window, looking out over the city that has shaped your understanding of normal life. The ordered streets, the reliable lighting, the systematic efficiency of German administration have provided the backdrop for your entire adolescence. Leaving for advanced studies would mean entering a world designed to strengthen your identification with this system while diminishing your connection to the specific place and community that formed your character. Yet the opportunity represents genuine advancement, not just for yourself, but potentially for your family and community. Young people from your background who succeed within the German European system might eventually be positioned to influence policy in ways that benefit local populations. The alternative to participation by people like yourself might be administration entirely, by those with no understanding of local conditions or concerns. As you prepare for sleep, you're aware that tomorrow will likely be the day when you make your decision. The acceptance materials require response within 1 week, and further delay would suggest uncertainty that might itself be interpreted negatively by authorities who value decisiveness and commitment. Your final waking thoughts focus on the question of what you owe to different aspects of your identity and experience. You owe something to your parents, who have worked successfully to provide security and opportunity within the current system. You owe something to your community, which has adapted to circumstances beyond its control while maintaining elements of cultural continuity. You owe something to your own talents and ambitions, which deserve the best development possible regardless of political circumstances. But you also owe something to principles and values that can't be easily defined or measured. Questions of dignity, autonomy, and authenticity that don't appear in official documents, but affect how you understand yourself and your place in the world. In your dreams, you find yourself standing in a vast library filled with books in languages you can and cannot read. Some volumes contain knowledge that would help you succeed in any future you might choose, while others contain wisdom about questions that no amount of practical success can answer. You reach for books that seem particularly important, but they dissolve in your hands before you can read them, leaving you with the sense that crucial information remains just beyond your grasp. When you wake, you carry with you a clearer understanding that the choice you're facing involves more than simply accepting or declining an educational opportunity. You're choosing between different versions of yourself, different relationships to history and community, different ways of understanding what it means to live responsibly in a complex world that offers no perfect options. The morning brings with it the necessity of decision, and you rise knowing that before the day ends, you'll have committed to a path that will determine not only your individual future, but your family's continuing place within the new European order that has become the only reality your generation has ever known. You wake on decision day with unusual clarity about what you're going to do. The choice has crystallized overnight, not through dramatic revelation, but through the gradual recognition that some decisions reveal their own necessity when examined carefully enough. The Advanced European Studies program represents exactly what it claims to be, an opportunity to shape the future of European civilization from within its power structures. At breakfast, your parents sense that you've reached a conclusion. They wait patiently while you finish your ersatz coffee and gather your thoughts for the conversation that will determine your family's future relationship with the German system. "I'm going to accept," you announce quietly, "but I want to understand what that means for all of us." Your father nods with obvious relief mixed with pride. It means that you'll have opportunities to influence how this new European system develops. Young people with your background and capabilities could help ensure that it serves all European peoples effectively, not just those with German ancestry. Your mother adds, "It also means that our family becomes fully integrated into the new order. Your success will be our success, but your obligations will create expectations for all of us." The conversation continues over the next hour, with your parents sharing observations about the German system that they've never expressed so directly before. They acknowledge both its genuine achievements in creating stability and prosperity and its costs in terms of local autonomy and cultural diversity. Your acceptance of the advanced program positions your family among those who benefit from current arrangements while taking on responsibility for their continuation and improvement. As you walk to school for what you now know will be among your final weeks in the local system, you see your neighborhood differently. The efficient street cleaning, the reliable infrastructure, the orderly flow of traffic represent achievements that previous French governments couldn't match. But they also represent the imposition of external standards and priorities that have transformed community life in ways that can't be easily reversed. Hans meets you at your usual corner, and you realize that your acceptance of the advanced program will fundamentally change your friendship. He'll continue in the local educational system, likely following his father into solid but routine administrative work, while you'll be trained for leadership roles that will take you far from this community. Any word about advanced studies? He asks with careful casualness. I received an acceptance letter, you reply. I'll be leaving for Baden-Baden after the term ends. Hans's congratulations are genuine, though you can see the recognition that your paths are now diverging in ways that make continued close friendship unlikely. The German system is efficient at identifying and developing talent, but it's also effective at sorting people into categories that determine their life trajectories. At school, you notice other students who appear to have received similar letters. Marie seems more subdued than usual, and you wonder whether her family background created complications that prevented her acceptance. Stefan and Anna both carry themselves with the slight air of importance that suggests they've also been selected for advanced opportunities. During European literature class, Professor Bauer's enthusiasm for the new continental cultural synthesis takes on additional meaning. He's describing exactly the kind of intellectual framework that you'll be trained to articulate and implement. Your acceptance of the advanced program means that you'll become one of the young people responsible for making these ideas reality rather than simply studying them. The class discussion of unity and diversity in European culture feels like preparation for responsibilities you'll soon be assuming. When Professor Bauer asks about the relationship between local traditions and continental identity, your answer reflects not just academic understanding, but emerging personal commitment to making such integration successful. After class, Professor Bauer approaches with obvious satisfaction. I assume from your confident participation today that you've received positive news about advanced studies. Yes, Professor. I'll be starting at Baden-Baden next term. His smile reflects genuine pride in having identified a student suitable for such opportunities. Excellent. You'll find the program challenging but extraordinarily rewarding. The people you'll study with will become the leaders of European civilization for the next 50 years. The observation carries both promise and weight. Your classmates at the academy will indeed become the administrative, technical, and intellectual elite of the German European system. Your relationships with them will shape not only your personal career, but your understanding of your role within the broader continental project. During lunch, you finally have the opportunity to compare experiences with Stefan and Anna, both of whom have also been accepted for advanced programs. Stefan will study technical administration with a focus on infrastructure development in the Eastern Territories. Anna will pursue diplomatic preparation for work with Mediterranean and African regions within the German sphere. It's remarkable how precisely they've matched our backgrounds to program specializations, Anna observes. Stefan's family experience with population movement makes him ideal for Eastern Territory work. My family's business connections with Italian and North African trade position me perfectly for Mediterranean diplomacy. The comment highlights something you've begun to recognize about the German selection process. It's not just identifying general talent, but matching specific backgrounds to particular administrative needs. Your own French background and bilingual capabilities make you valuable for work managing populations that were conquered rather than allied. Marie joins the conversation briefly, but doesn't volunteer information about her own situation. Her silence suggests that her family background created insurmountable complications, despite her obvious intellectual capabilities. It's a reminder that the German system, however meritocratic it claims to be, still prioritizes political reliability over pure academic achievement. The afternoon classes proceed with the knowledge that your time in the local system is drawing to a close. Teachers who have guided your development for years are preparing to transfer responsibility to institutions specifically designed to shape German European leadership. Your relationship with them is shifting from student-teacher to future colleague-current employee within the same broad system. After school, you complete the formal acceptance process, signing documents that commit you to the program's requirements and expectations. The paperwork includes provisions for family communication, academic standards, behavioral expectations, and post-graduation service obligations. Reading through these materials makes clear that you're accepting not just educational opportunity, but a comprehensive life trajectory. That evening, your family gathers for what amounts to a farewell dinner, though you won't actually leave for several more weeks. The conversation ranges across memories of your childhood, observations about how much the world has changed during your lifetime, and practical planning for maintaining family connections during your absence. Your father shares stories about his own educational experiences before the war, when French institutions prepared young people for careers within a very different political and cultural framework. The contrast with your upcoming academy training highlights how completely the European educational landscape has been transformed by German victory. Your mother contributes memories of cultural life in pre-war Paris, when artistic and intellectual expression followed different patterns than those now officially encouraged. Her observations help you understand what kinds of cultural continuity might be preserved within the new system and what aspects of previous French civilization have been permanently altered. As the evening progresses, you realize that your family is conducting a kind of informal cultural transmission, sharing insights and perspectives that may not be explicitly included in your academy training. They're equipping you with background knowledge that could help you serve German interests while maintaining some connection to the specific history and character of your local community. Before sleep, you spend extended time at your bedroom window, taking what amounts to a farewell look at the city that shaped your understanding of normal life. The ordered streets, the efficient lighting, the systematic organization of urban space have provided the backdrop for your entire adolescence. Your academy training will teach you to create similar environments throughout German territories. But tonight, you also notice details that speak to older patterns of life that persist beneath German administrative efficiency. The irregular placement of some older buildings reflects organic urban development that preceded systematic planning. The varied architectural styles represent centuries of French cultural expression that couldn't be completely eliminated by 7 years of German administration. As you prepare for sleep, you're aware that you're ending one phase of your life and beginning another that will fundamentally change your relationship to this place and community. The academy will train you to see cities like Paris, not as homes, but as administrative challenges requiring systematic solutions. Your final waking thoughts focus on the historical significance of the choice you've made. In a timeline where Germany won World War I, young people like yourself represent the mechanism through which German victory becomes permanent European transformation. Your success within the system will help ensure that current arrangements continue indefinitely rather than remaining temporary impositions that might eventually be reversed. You fall asleep, knowing that your decision has placed you among those who will determine whether the new European order evolves toward greater inclusivity and cultural diversity, or toward more complete German dominance. Your influence will be real, but constrained by the system's fundamental assumptions about efficiency, hierarchy, and political loyalty. In your dreams, you find yourself walking through a vast architectural model of European cities, each designed according to German planning principles, but retaining elements that reflect local traditions. You move between Paris, Prague, Warsaw, and Rome, all transformed by systematic efficiency, while maintaining recognizable cultural characteristics. The dream feels like a preview of the work you'll eventually be doing, implementing German administrative principles while managing the complexities of governing diverse populations with different histories and expectations. It's work that requires both technical competence and cultural sensitivity, exactly the combination that your background and training are designed to provide. When you wake, you carry with you a clearer understanding of the historical role you've accepted. In this timeline where German efficiency has triumphed over democratic chaos, young people like yourself serve as the human mechanism through which conquest becomes administration and administration becomes accepted reality. The new European order requires constant maintenance by people capable of bridging different cultural traditions while ensuring that German interests remain paramount. Your academy training will teach you to perform this balancing act professionally making the system work effectively for everyone while never forgetting who's ultimately in charge. But perhaps, most significantly, you'll be part of a generation that genuinely believes in the possibility of making the system work justly and effectively. Unlike the military leaders who won the war, or the first generation of administrators who imposed German rule, your generation has grown up within the integrated system and has some capacity to humanize it from within. Whether this influence will be sufficient to address the system's fundamental problems of democratic legitimacy and cultural suppression remains to be seen. But your choice to work within the system rather than resist it represents the kind of pragmatic adaptation that may be the only realistic path toward gradual improvement of conditions for conquered populations. As morning arrives and you prepare for another day in your current life, you're aware that history has positioned your generation at a crucial turning point. The choices made by young people like yourself will determine whether the German-European system evolves toward inclusive continental civilization or crystallizes into permanent ethnic hierarchy. Your individual decision to accept advanced training represents one small but significant factor in that larger historical process. Whether the result will justify the compromises required remains to be seen, but you've chosen to accept responsibility for trying to influence the outcome from within the system rather than opposing it from outside. And in this alternate timeline where German victory created a very different Europe than the one we know, that may represent the best choice available to a thoughtful young person trying to navigate the complexities of living responsibly within a world shaped by forces beyond their control. The breakfast conversation with your parents feels different now that your future is settled. There's relief mixed with anticipation, pride mixed with concern about the challenges ahead. Your family has successfully adapted to the new European order, and your acceptance into the advanced program represents both the culmination of that adaptation and the beginning of a new phase in which your personal success becomes integral to the system's continued stability. As you gather your school materials for another ordinary day in what remains of your local education, you're aware that you're living through a historical moment that would seem extraordinary to previous generations. But for young people like yourself, it represents simply the particular set of circumstances within which you must make decisions about how to live responsibly and successfully. In our own timeline, where democratic values survived the crisis of World War I and eventually triumphed over various forms of authoritarianism, it's easy to see the choices available to young people in this alternate Europe as fundamentally compromised. But from within that system, the choice to work for gradual improvement rather than futile resistance might represent the most ethical path available. The academy training you'll receive will be excellent, providing genuine expertise in administration, economics, engineering, or whatever field you choose to pursue. The career opportunities will be real, offering chances to influence policy affecting millions of people. The intellectual framework you'll master will contain genuine insights into human organization and social coordination. But it will all take place within a system that achieved its dominance through military conquest and maintains its authority through systematic oversight of populations that never chose to be governed by German institutions. The efficiency and prosperity that German administration has provided come at costs in democratic participation and cultural autonomy that may prove more significant over time than they appear to your generation. Your choice to work within the system represents a bet that gradual reform from within is more effective than resistance from outside. Whether that bet will prove correct depends on factors that extend far beyond any individual's control or influence. But it's the choice that your generation faces, and you've made it with as much thought and moral seriousness as the circumstances allow. As you walk to school through streets that represent 7 years of successful German administration of conquered territory, you carry with you both the opportunities and obligations of someone who has chosen to serve a system that provides real benefits while raising fundamental questions about legitimacy, consent, and cultural identity that have no easy answer. And perhaps that ambiguity represents the most honest acknowledgement of what it means to live responsibly in a complex world where perfect choices are rarely available, and where the consequences of our decisions extend far beyond what we can predict or control. In any timeline, in any historical circumstances, growing up means learning to navigate such complexities with whatever wisdom and integrity we can manage. But as you settle into your desk for another day of European literature, aware that Professor Bauer's enthusiasm for continental cultural synthesis now describes work you'll soon be doing professionally, you can't help wondering what alternative choices might have been available in a world where democratic values had survived the crisis of 1914-1918, and where young people like yourself could pursue education and careers without having to balance personal advancement against questions of political loyalty and cultural identity. It's a question that belongs to a different timeline, one where different decisions led to different outcomes and created different possibilities for how young people could understand their responsibilities to themselves, their communities, and their historical moment. But it's a question that continues to echo in the quiet moments when you're not actively engaged with the demands of navigating life within the only system you've ever known. And perhaps carrying such questions, even when they can't be answered, represents its own form of resistance to the total domination of imagination by current arrangements. Perhaps maintaining awareness that things could be different, even when changing them seems impossible, preserves something essential about human dignity and possibility that no system of efficient administration can completely eliminate. In the end, that may be the most important thing you can take with you to the academy. Not just the academic preparation and cultural background that will help you serve the German European system effectively, but also the awareness that systems are human creations that can be changed by human action. However slowly and carefully such change must be pursued. Whether your generation will be able to humanize the German system sufficiently to address its fundamental problems of legitimacy and inclusion remains to be seen. But your choice to try represents both the best hope for gradual improvement and a form of moral engagement with historical circumstances that preserves the possibility of something better, even when the path toward such improvement remains unclear. And as your literature class discusses the relationship between individual choice and historical necessity in European texts, you understand that you're living through exactly such a moment of choice within historical constraints, trying to find ways to act responsibly and effectively within circumstances that you didn't create but can't escape. It's a situation that requires both practical wisdom about working within existing systems and moral clarity about what kinds of improvements are worth pursuing despite the risks and compromises involved. Your academy training will provide the practical skills, but maintaining the moral clarity will be your own responsibility, informed by family conversations, friendships, and private reading that help you remember that current arrangements, however efficient and stable, represent only one possible way of organizing human society. Tonight, as you complete homework assignments that prepare you for academic success within the German European educational system, you carry with you both excitement about the opportunities ahead and awareness of the historical weight of the choices your generation is making about the future of European civilization. Whether those choices will ultimately serve human flourishing or merely provide efficient management of conquered populations remains to be determined by actions that haven't yet been taken, by people who are still learning how to think about such questions responsibly. But the very fact that such questions can still be asked, even within a system designed to discourage them, suggests that the human capacity for moral reflection and political imagination has survived even 7 years of systematic German administration. And perhaps that survival represents the foundation for whatever positive changes your generation might eventually be able to achieve within or despite the constraints of the system you've chosen to serve. As you prepare for sleep on your final night as a purely local student, you understand that tomorrow begins a new phase of your life in which personal success and historical responsibility become inseparably connected, requiring you to navigate the complex relationship between individual advancement and collective well-being that every generation faces in its own particular way. In this alternate timeline where German victory created a very different Europe, your navigation of that relationship will help determine whether the new continental order evolves toward greater justice and inclusion or crystallizes into permanent hierarchy and cultural suppression. It's a responsibility that no 16-year-old should have to bear, but it's the responsibility that history has placed on your generation. How you and your classmates handle it will determine what kind of Europe exists 50 years from now. and what kinds of choices will be available to your own children when their time comes to decide how to live responsibly within whatever system your decisions have helped to create or transform. The weight of such responsibility could be paralyzing if contemplated too directly, but it also provides meaning and purpose that many generations have been denied. Your choices matter not just for your own future, but for the future of European civilization itself. And perhaps that significance, however daunting, represents a kind of gift, the opportunity to participate consciously in the making of history, rather than simply being swept along by forces beyond your understanding or influence. As you finally drift towards sleep, you carry with you both the excitement of beginning a new phase of your life and the sobering awareness that the choices you're making will echo through generations of European lives that haven't yet been lived. Whether those echoes will ultimately represent progress toward greater human dignity and freedom, or merely the efficient administration of conquered peoples, depends on decisions that you and your generation are just beginning to make. But the very fact that the question remains open suggests that history itself remains open, however constrained by current circumstances. And perhaps maintaining that openness, even within systems designed to close it down, represents the most important contribution your generation can make to whatever possibilities the future may still hold. With that thought, you fall asleep in a Europe that German efficiency has made orderly and prosperous, but that human imagination and moral commitment might still be able to transform into something more just and inclusive than its current arrangements allow. The dreams that come are filled with libraries containing books not yet written, cities designed according to principles not yet discovered, and conversations between people who have learned to balance efficiency with democracy, order with freedom, stability with the possibility of beneficial change. When you wake, those dreams will fade, but perhaps something of their possibility will remain to guide you through the complexities of academy training and whatever responsibilities await beyond. For now, that must be enough. The awareness that even within systems that seem to foreclose alternatives, human imagination and commitment can preserve the seeds of transformation that future generations might be able to cultivate into realities we can't yet envision. And with that awareness, your first life as a local student in occupied Paris comes to an end, while your second life as a trainee for leadership in the German European system prepares to begin. Whether the continuity between those lives will prove more significant than the transformation remains to be seen. But both the continuity and the transformation will be shaped by choices you're learning to make, with whatever wisdom your 16 years of experience in this strange new Europe have been able to provide. Tomorrow those choices begin in earnest. Tonight, you sleep peacefully in the knowledge that you've made them as thoughtfully as your circumstances and capabilities allow, and that whatever comes next will be faced with the same careful attention to both practical necessity and moral principle that brought you to this moment of decision. In the end, perhaps that's all any generation can do. Make the best choices available within their particular historical constraints, while working to expand the range of choices available to those who come after. Your generation's contribution to that ongoing human project is just beginning, but it begins with the foundation of careful thought and moral seriousness that tonight's decision represents. And in a timeline where such foundations are rare and precious, that represents no small achievement, whatever the ultimate outcome may prove to be. The last sound you hear before sleep is the distant whistle of a German train carrying goods and passengers efficiently across the new European transportation network that your future work will help to maintain and improve. Whether that network will ultimately serve human flourishing or merely administrative convenience depends on choices that begin tomorrow and continue for decades to come. But tonight, the sound is simply the lullaby of a world at peace, however complex the terms of that peace may be, and however much work remains to be done to make it worthy of the human lives it governs. With that sound and that thought, your childhood in the new Europe comes quietly to its end, and your adult life in service to its continuation and possible transformation prepares to begin. And so we reach the end of tonight's journey through a Europe that never was but might have been. You've experienced 16 years of life in a world where German victory reshaped not just political boundaries, but the very nature of what it means to grow up Europe. Where efficiency triumphed over chaos, order over uncertainty, and systematic administration over democratic mess. As you've navigated that world through teenage eyes, you've encountered choices that no young person should have to face. Questions about loyalty and identity, advancement and integrity, personal success and collective responsibility that have no perfect answers because perfect choices rarely exist in any time. Perhaps what's most unsettling about this alternate history is not its dramatic differences from our own world, but its similarities. The trains run on time, the streets are clean, education is excellent, and opportunities for advancement are real. Young people fall in love, pursue their talents, and dream about the future, much as they do in any prosperous society. But beneath that surface normality lies the fundamental question that haunts all human societies. On what terms does prosperity rest, and what costs are we willing to accept for stability and efficiency? In our timeline, democratic values survived the crisis of 1914-1918, however imperfectly. Young people can pursue education and careers without having to balance personal advancement against questions of political loyalty to systems they didn't choose. Cultural diversity and local autonomy remain possible even within larger political unions. The price of these freedoms has often been inefficiency, conflict, and uncertainty that more authoritarian systems might have avoided. But as you've experienced life in that more efficient alternative, perhaps you've gained new appreciation for freedoms we often take for granted. The freedom to question authority without fear of consequence. The freedom to maintain cultural traditions that serve no administrative purpose. The freedom to choose representatives who can be replaced if they fail to serve the public interest. The freedom to be inefficient when efficiency serves purposes we don't support. The young person whose choice we followed tonight faced the best possible version of life under enlightened authoritarian. Genuine opportunities, excellent education, meaningful work, and the chance to humanize the system from which. Yet even under these optimal conditions, the fundamental tension between individual autonomy and systematic control created moral complexities that couldn't be easily resolved. Perhaps that's the deepest lesson of any alternate history, that human dignity requires not just prosperity and order, but also the possibility of genuine choice about how we're governed and what values our societies serve. Systems that provide everything except that fundamental freedom, however efficient and benevolent they may appear, ultimately ask us to accept too high a price for whatever benefits they provide. In our world, imperfect though it may be, young people can still ask such questions openly, pursue answers collectively, and work to change systems that don't serve human flourishing. The messiness of democratic politics, the inefficiencies of cultural diversity, and the uncertainties of genuine freedom turn out to be not bugs in the system, but features worth preserving despite their. As you return from tonight's journey through that alternate Europe, perhaps you'll find yourself more grateful for freedoms that seemed ordinary before you experienced life without them. More aware of how precious it is to live in societies where loyalty is earned rather than demanded, where cultural diversity is celebrated rather than merely managed, and where young people can choose their own paths without having to serve political systems that conquered their community. The train whistle that lulled our protagonist to sleep speaks of connections that bind human societies together. But in our timeline, those connections remain voluntary associations between free peoples rather than administrative necessities imposed by military victory. Tonight, as you drift toward your own sleep, perhaps you'll dream of cities designed not just for efficiency but for human flourishing, where young people can pursue their talents in service of values they've chosen rather than systems they've inherited, where the trains run on time because people want them to, not because order has been imposed by, where the lights stay on because democratic communities have chosen to maintain them, not because administrative efficiency demands their reliable function, where young people can grow up to serve human civilization itself, rather than any particular vision of how that civilization should be organized. Sweet dreams, and may you wake tomorrow with renewed appreciation for the imperfect freedoms that make such dreams possible to pursue, however difficult their realization may prove to be. The chaos of democracy, it turns out, creates possibilities for human dignity that even the most efficient authoritarianism cannot provide. And in the end, That may be worth all the inefficiencies, uncertainties, and complexities that genuine freedom necessarily entails. Sleep well, citizens of the timeline where that choice can still be made.